I'm glad to be with Alex here. He kindly accepted to have an interview with us. And Alex is a professor of EC at the University of Pittsburgh and currently on leave to serve as program director in NSF. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's go over the questions. So for the first question, because you're also a faculty at university, like how do you recruit students? Like what is your kind of agenda for hiring students?
So I've always looked to recruit from multiple sources, one of which is that I want to encourage American students who don't always know about graduate school or understand what graduate school is compared to an undergraduate degree to at least be informed and to consider graduate work. And so part of what I do is I bring in undergraduate students into my research lab, often using things like the NSF REU program, but also through other mechanisms, and I try to immerse them in some research, so maybe during the summer, so they can really work alongside graduate students and see what the culture is like for graduate school. That often gives them a real interest in potentially considering a graduate degree. But of course, I also I work with students from all over the world, and certainly we recruit the students that apply, but also we reach out to various places through potentially colleagues that have connections at other universities abroad or what have you. So I've worked from students from Europe, from Iran, from India, from China, and always the goal is to bring in excited students. And honestly, you can always see that a student has great credentials, but to talk to them and to see their excitement, that's really when I know that this is a good candidate for someone to bring into the lab. So that's kind of my thought process.
That's
on
great.
recruiting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So yeah, let's see. Like you bring the students. How do you ensure that their topic that they choose or the project that they choose lead to a successful kind of ending, basically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always try to do in my own personal research. I try to find unsolved problems that aren't in a crowded space. And so I wasn't the first person to jump into machine learning. I was interested in potentially using spintronic memories to do PIM, for instance, and then we got into some of the machine learning acceleration. So I look to find the areas of interest that a student has, my areas of interest, and I encourage them to explore, to read, to go places like conferences to see what other people are doing, and then to come back and say, well, I'm excited about this, and I'm excited about this, and then I can say, well, I'm excited about this and this. Where's the overlap? Let's draw the Venn diagram, and so I think you have to find this mixture of the right place to look, the things that are topical, but also the things that excite the student. And that's kind of the mix, right, for success for the graduate.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's very important for them to kind of be excited about something, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the metrics. So I think back to your choose of career, like why did you choose academia?
I was actually really on the fence when I graduated from Northwestern. I applied to several industry groups, and then I applied to universities as well. And what I realized was when I learned about kind of the work I would do in industry as a young PhD versus what I could do at a university, I got excited about doing some of the projects that I found to be exciting. I felt like, so my research then was in MATLAB and C to HDLs, and we were building FPGA designs and chip designs, and my research advisor was spinning off companies, and a lot of people were going to these companies. And I said, I like that, but I want to do something a little different. And so I got excited about doing some work with IBM as a DARPA project, which was kind of industry driven, but it was also, I had my own freedom. And so I could take my compiler's expertise and do something a little different. And then the next thing I did was build a system to automate design of RFID chips. And then we took that to CPS systems and IoT. So it just felt like I could really make an impact as an academic, but not, sort of in my own silo. I wanted to do that in a way that was connected with what was going on in the community. So that's why I chose the academic direction.
And then tie back to your previous kind of answer, like this is something that you are passionate about.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly right.
Great. So I think you talk about like how do you pick the research area, a new project. But so I'm sure that with your schedule you have like a multiple task, multiple project. How do you create this balance to kind of make sure that all the projects moving forward, your personal time and all this stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, right now I'm trying to balance being at NSF, but I also have activities going on in spintronic memory, PIM, and quantum computing and sustainable computing. So my goal is always to get um, a caretaker from my group that's sort of a leader for each one of these thrusts.
Makes sense.
And it's not always a postdoc. It's often a more senior PhD student. But I want to have somebody there that when we bring in a new student in that area, they feel like they can be part of a team. And I don't have to be always that person that is saying, "Come on into the lab and let me shake your hand," and these kinds of things. But they still feel like part of the effort. And so then I can spend my time judiciously working with them, but I definitely find the time. And so there will always be the crunch time for the paper going to the conference, from that area. And I say, okay, I carve out my time. I work with you really closely for this time. And so, we build those, we get in the trenches together and we have that time. And so, so that's kind of how I think about it. And I've also always tried to encourage my students to present the work.
Oh, that's very important. Yep.
If they can't present it to me, then they don't know it, right? If they can't present it to somebody outside, then they don't know it well enough. So we have many times to do it internally, present the work to us at the group meetings, and then take it to the conference and take it to even to go to outside to industry and present the work. So I really want the students to feel like they're not just the worker bees, but they're really part of the team, and they're thinking of the ideas and they're making the contributions. And then when they come to write their PhD, they're like, wow, I have these 5 things that I really did that were really unique. That's what makes me happy at the end of the day.
That's great. Yeah, the team building and being part of the team is very important, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So can you explain to us, like, how was your kind of career growth in academia, like from beginning and now that you're in the position that you're doing like NSF and all these works?
Yeah, so for each career grade, I wanted to create milestones, and I had goals about certain projects that I wanted to be impactful. And so for my assistant professor time, it was building compilers and computer architecture interaction with connections to things like developing the Blue Gene system as part of that DARPA project, and then extending it to chip multiprocessors and then connecting it back to sort of configurable accelerators, which were sort of the first kind of parts of where we were moving with chip multiprocessors and accelerators and systems, and now we're doing it in package and all these kinds of exciting ways. And so that was those were kind of my assistant professor milestones. And then for associate professor, I said, now there's this really underserved area called sustainable computing, and people aren't looking at the cost it takes to make chips in terms of carbon and these kinds of things. And so I wanted to build an area out of this. Now that I was tenured, I had this flexibility, I had this freedom. So I started working on this. It was hard because it was hard to get people to kind of come along. It was not something they necessarily thought was the obvious. Everybody would say energy efficiency. I'd say, well, life cycle. They said, what's that? So, it takes time to bring that community along. And now 10 years later, it's really becoming impactful, right? Yeah. So once I finished my associate professor years, and I did other things, I was doing spintronic memory and that kind of thing. I said I really wanted to take this to the next level. So I said, I want to go to NSF and I want to build a program around this. I want to get the community engaged. And I was pleased. Just here we ran a workshop, and there's so much now excitement around this area of sustainable computing and concern, right? So because we haven't been thinking about these embodied costs for these systems. And so now some of the earlier work that I did is I feel like it's really been valuable and impactful. And so now, I'm thinking about what's the next step, right? How do we do the next thing? And I have so many good ideas. There's so many great ideas in the community. I'm just so excited about where this can go. And so now I feel like this is going to go on its way. And I said, okay, the next thing I want to do is think about quantum.
That's great.
Totally different, right? My undergraduate degree was in physics, so I felt like I'm the guy. I'm the guy that can sort of switch gears and take architecture and my background in computer-aided design and connect with some of the physics ideas. And so we're doing quantum computer architecture, co-design, modular design. It's very, very cool. And so later down the line, I'm expecting, now we'll think about sustainable quantum. It'll be totally crazy right now,
That's great.
but it's, these are the kinds of ways to think. Always be thinking, 3 steps ahead. And so that's how I kind of think about separating the career path. In terms of work-life balance, I'm a musician.
Oh, that's great.
And I play in a local orchestra in Pittsburgh. I have been a freelancer as a chamber musician. And so I used that as my foil. I'm reading a paper, I'm writing a proposal, I'm just too stressed. Okay, stop. I'll go do this. And it lets me kind of recuperate and come back, and then I'm fresh and I feel good about jumping back into the work. But family always comes first. And you have to think this way. So if my door is always open to my daughters, they can come in anytime, ask me questions about their homework, whatever. I'll stop, talk, and that's always been a thing. And I've always said, one of the things we like to do together is ski. So every other weekend we say we're going to go for weekend ski trips and we're going to spend time together. Their spring break, that's their time. I'm going to go with them on spring break. So you need to carve out the time. You have to schedule it, right? Because when the deadlines are, but this is how you carve out the time, and this is how you balance. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I've been involved with my daughters, with my wife, in our lives, but I've also been able to be professionally active, and I've even been able to do a little music on the side and feel good about that. So that's how I think about the work-life balance.
That's great. Thanks. So I think you mentioned slightly about this NSF role that you're taking on. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can kind of expand on that, like what made you kind of to choose this path, and for kind of junior and senior faculty, like how they can become a director.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think certainly this is something that you should do when you're after tenure. Mm-hmm. But this is a very rewarding experience, and it's something that I don't know that a lot of people think about. And there are some barriers, but I think they're reasonable. So you can take some time and say I'm gonna not do quite as much research maybe as I've done in the past. Maybe a good time is when a couple of grants are winding down and you're thinking about what's next. Come to the NSF and do a rotation. You can see what the community is proposing. If you feel like there's an underserved area, you can work towards trying to build, commitment or effort towards this area. So I always hear about, well, how can I, get a program going in X? Do a workshop. You can submit to me a workshop, or you can go and you can, find the ringleaders to do the workshop, and then you can invest in this space, and then it sort of becomes part of the ethos, which is very exciting. So when I joined NSF, we had 3 major areas of emphasis in computing. It was AI, it was quantum, and it was the notion of post-war computing design. Makes sense. Now we have a 4th area, and it's climate. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited that I was able to be part of bringing that to the forefront. And so now, as I think about moving on from NSF, I feel energized, and I can now feel like, okay, great. I've made a contribution here. I've grown a program. I've grown not only the program, but the program directors now have sort of seen where this is starting and where this can go. And so they can now take it to the next step, and we can do the research together. That is just great. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who feels like, I really want to, this area I need to go, and I need to give it some emphasis. Do that. We are the disruptors. As academics going to National Science Foundation, we're the disruptors. There's permanent staff. They definitely know the science. They know how to evaluate the science, but they're not the ones that are going to come in and say, we got to do sustainable computing. We got to do, we got to do quantum. We got to do something new. That's where the disruptors come in, and it's a good disruption.
I like it the way that you say it because you had the research in sustainability and now you can kind of enable other people in the community to do that. That's great.
Yep.
So I think for the last question, I think you have two roles, faculty and NSF.
Yeah.
What is the rewarding? I think you maybe barely mentioned it in the discussion. What are the rewarding kind of part of this job?
So I don't see them as really disjoint in a lot of ways. I feel like the goal has always been to find new ways to advance research.
Of course.
I don't want to be the third cop to the scene, right? I don't want to be the guy who shows up after people have done the important work and say, oh, there's little tweaks here and there. I want to be thinking about what's the new seminal topic that people aren't working on, and seeing what people are thinking, and then seeing the stuff that's left out of the Venn diagram. That's where I want to go after, and those things that are both impactful and underserved. That's where the excitement is. So, if you feel like, I've always been doing X, I really want to do Y, that's a great time to go and think about, the next direction. So I really don't see them as disjoint. I see them as part of the same effort. I will run a workshop as a professor, but I'll also do it as an NSF program manager. I'll publish papers, but at the same time, I'll also build communities. And these things are all part of the same process. NSF wants to make transformations in terms of science. I, as a researcher, want to make transformative science. And so everything really feels symbiotic to me.
That's great. Thank you, Alex, again for having accepting this interview. It was
Thank
great
you.
talking to you.
It was great talking to you too.
Thank you so much.